Jaya Rama Rama Kunjabiyari Gopi Janavara Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Rama Rama Kunjabihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari, Radha Kunja Bihari, Hare. Radha Kunja Bihari, Jaya Jagana, Jaya Jagana, Jaya Baladev, Mai Subhadra. Jaya Srinataji, Jaya Balagopal, Jaya Srinataji, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Gaurani Jaya, Jaya Gaurani Jaya, Jaya Gaurani Jaya, Jaya Gaurani Jaya. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupada Dharamahamsa Parivada Kacharya Vastora Satashishimar Divine Grace Founder of Iskana Bhaichar Naravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Shiva Prabhupada Ki Ananti Gauri Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki Jai Their Most Merciful Lordship Shri Shri Kunja Bihari Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Shri Baladev Mai Subhadra Shri Nathaji Shri Balagopal Ki Jai Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai Nitai Go Prem. All glories to the assembled. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudiraya.
Tato Jayamudire.
Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu.
Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiti.
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiti.
Reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, chapter 11, canto, first canto, chapter 11, text 1. Sutta
Sutta
Uvacha,
Vacha.
Sutta Uvacha,
Sutta Vacha.
Anartan
Anartan.
Sa
Sa.
Upavrajya,
Pavrajya.
Anartan Sa Upavrajya,
Anartan Sa Pavrajya.
Sridhan
Shriddhan.
Jana
Jana.
Padan
Padan.
Svakan,
Svakan.
Sridhan Janapadan Svakan,
Shriddhan Jana Padan Svakan.
Dadmau
Dadma.
Daravaram
Darvaram.
Tesham,
Tesham.
Dadmau Daravaram Tesham,
Dadma Daravaram Tesham.
Visharam
Vishadam.
Samayam
Samaya.
Eva,
Iva.
Visharam Samayam Eva,
Vishadam Samayaniva.
Sutuvacha
Sutta Vacha.
Anartan Sa Upavrajya,
Anartan Sa Pavrajya.
Vidvan Janapadan Svakam,
Shriddhan Jana Padan Svakan.
Dadmau Darvaram Tesham,
Dadma Daravaram Tesham.
Visadam Samayan Iva,
Vishadam Samayaniva.
Sutuvacha
Sutta Vacha.
Anartan Samupavrajya,
Anartan Sa Pavrajya.
Svidhan Janapadan Svakam,
Shriddhan Jana Padan Svakan.
Dadmau Darvaram Tesham,
Dadma Daravaram Tesham.
Visadam Samayan Iva,
Vishadam Samayaniva.
Sutuvacha
Sutta Vacha.
Anartan Samupavrajya,
Anartan Sa Pavrajya.
Sridhan Janapadan Svakam,
Shriddhan Jana Padan Svakan.
Dadmau Daravaram Tesham,
Dadma Daravaram Tesham.
Visadam Samayan Iva.
Vishadam Samayaniva. Sutta Vacha.
Sutuvacha
Anartan Sa Pavrajya.
Anartan Samupavrajya,
Shriddhan Jana Padan Svakan.
Sridhan Janapadan Svakam,
Dadma Daravaram Tesham.
Dadmau Daravaram Tesham,
Vishadam Samayaniva.
Visadam Samayan Iva. Sutuvacha Anartan Samupavrajya, Sridhan Janapadan Svakan, Dadmau Daravaram Tesham, Visadam Samayaniva. Sutuvacha Anartan Samupavrajya, Sridhan Janapadan Svakan, Dadmau Daravaram Tesham, Visadam Samayaniva. Sutuvacha.
Sutta Vacha.
Sutta Goswami said,
Sutta Goswami said,
Anartan,
Anartan,
the country known as Anartan, Dwarka,
the country known as Anartan, Dwarka.
Sa he, Upavrajya,
Pavrajya,
reaching the border of
reaching the border of
Sridhan,
Shriddhan,
most prosperous,
most prosperous.
Janapadan,
Janapadan,
city,
city,
Svakan,
Svakan,
his own,
his own.
Dadmau,
Dadma,
sounded.
sounded.
Daravaram,
Naravaram,
the auspicious conch shell.
the auspicious conch shell.
Panchajanya.
Panchajanya.
Tesham,
Tesham,
of them.
of them.
Visaram,
Chara,
dejection.
dejection.
Samayam,
Samayan,
pacifying.
pacifying.
Eva,
Eva,
seemingly.
seemingly.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Acharanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of Anartas, Dwarka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival, and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. Please repeat. Srila Goswami said,
Sutta Goswami said,
upon reaching the border of its most prosperous metropolis,
most prosperous metropolis,
known as the country of Anartas,
known as the country of Anarthas,
Dwarka,
where
the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival,
heralding his arrival,
and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants.
and apparently pacifying the dejection of inhabitants.
Srila Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anartas, Dwarka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival, and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. Purport by His Divine Grace of Charanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The beloved Lord was away from his own prosperous metropolis of Dwarka for a considerably long period because of the battle of Kurukshetra, and thus all the inhabitants were overcome with melancholia due to the separation. When the Lord descends on the earth, his eternal associates also come with him, just as the entourage of a king accompanies him. Such associates of the Lord are eternally liberated souls, and they cannot bear the separation of the Lord even for a moment because of intense affection for the Lord. Thus the inhabitants of the city of Dwarka were in a mood of dejection and expected the arrival of the Lord at any moment. So the heralding sound of the auspicious conch shell was very encouraging. And apparently the sound pacified their dejection. They were still more aspirant to see the Lord amongst themselves, and all of them became alert to receive him in the befitting manner. These are the signs of spontaneous love of God. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chanshilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master who, with the torchlight of knowledge, has opened my eyes which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. Now Krishna is entering this city of Dwarka. It doesn't say exactly how long he was gone for. Now, I thought I remember hearing the battle only lasted for 18 days. Do you know that to be a fact?
Kurukshetra battle?
Yeah.
18 days.
18 days, right? But then how was it he was away for so long?
Because the Pandavas pacified him and asked him to wake up. And even Bhishmadeva departed after the war.
Yeah.
So left his body afterwards. So that, and also to console his sisters because they are.
See, this is confounding me because I thought Krishna had left Vrindavan when he was like 16 years old.
Yeah.
But then he was in the battle, he was 125 years old. That's what I was also told. So I'm going to have to ask Krishna about this. This is now confounding me. So there are probably, I'm sure, some devotees here who know how to answer this question. But certainly we can see the purport of this verse is to reveal just how affected the inhabitants of Krishna's city are by Krishna not being there. And it is their qualification, their love for Krishna in that way, that allows them to dwell in his city. His city described as the most prosperous metropolis. Metropolis generally referring to a busy, active place where a lot of people are doing a lot of things. Now, his auspicious conch shell is described as being sounded. Just the sound of that conch, it seems to be suggested that hearing that, because they knew it was Krishna returning, the sound of his conch shell brought them great satisfaction and relief from the anxiety of not being able to see Krishna every day there. Now, this same anxiety is revealed in our lives. Our separation from Krishna is revealed by our fear of dying, our separation from loved ones when they depart from this world, the general anxiety on a day-to-day basis of the separation is revealed by the types of activities we engage ourselves in, making life difficult for ourselves. And when Krishna's presence is there, then perfection is known. But when Krishna leaves, then separation is experienced. So now this separation that we have been having, I was considering about how long we've been away this morning. I was considering and realizing if we were alive 100, 200 years ago, at the time this building was built, some of us could have had parts of our body in the form of trees used in the building of this structure. So we might be living in the very house our previous body has helped contribute to the building of this mansion. Of course, it's probably not likely, but the reality is there that there could be remains of our previous lives here because of our attachments to the place that we are in. But then I'm realizing as well, all of us are sharing the common judgment of death. This is a place where death has been allowed to become normal. And so, in a sense, we're all facing the reality of having to leave these bodies and the labor we've taken part in here for so many years and find the real body that has in it built-in knowledge. It is made of the substances we are looking for in this world when we look for knowledge about Krishna. But so, having a body of that nature automatically reveals the qualification the soul has gained to be able to get that body. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness, the souls coming into Krishna consciousness are revealing the fact that they have been involved with Krishna consciousness before. We have little remembrance of that in some cases. when I went to India for the first time, I was kind of taken over by this idea of astrology and people having knowledge of being able to tell you what your past lives were. For some time in Detroit, devotees were getting enamored by the thought that they could find out their previous life. And then what to speak, Jagaguru reads Brigu. So he was telling us you could even know the day a person is going to leave their body by reading Brigu, if you delve into it deep enough. So with my consulting of an astrologer in India, I came to find out that as a boy, in one of my previous lives, I had access to where the sages would read the scriptures, but when they were gone, I would take one palm leaf and put it over here, and I'd take another palm leaf and put it over there, he said, and that was why I was having so much difficulty putting all these scriptures together, you know. And that's, my whole life was being spent prior to that point trying to read this literature, that literature. Then when you finally come in contact with Shrimadbhagavatam through the association of devotees, you come to find it to satisfy, just like the devotees here are satisfied to see Krishna coming into Dwarka. Now you read Bhagavatam, and it is like a satisfying like that fulfills the desire the soul has to once again be reminded of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of the supreme revealing of all of his abilities and the qualities of his personality, so that we can know we have for certain that which we have been longing for lifetimes. We have, by our consciousness, transformed in our consciousness what we previously had experience with by association with Krishna and by having knowledge of what the spiritual world is like. And it has created, similarly in us, a longing to know that magnificence of the eternal nature. Once again, the magnificence of the glorious nature of all the living entities who dwell there. And so Bhagavatam, by bringing our consciousness back into the realization of reality, because we are living in a dream world separate from the absolute reality of the kingdom, where all the living entities know that the material world is far separated from that area of the spiritual universe where the eternal pastimes are taking place. Krishna takes pastimes here, he takes part in pastimes here, but even what we see in these present forms we are in is limited by our abilities to conceive, even while we're reading the very words Krishna has himself spoken. Still, our consciousness is somewhat limited. Unless Krishna opens up our eyes, like he did with Sanjaya, he can reveal to us all the pastimes he's taking part in, just like a TV screen. And this concept of a TV screen being thought to be most advanced development of man's communication when the television was invented, so to speak. But this means of communication has been since time immemorial. All of these inventions are trying to replicate what access we had to the energy of Krishna that was available then in the spiritual world without the need of mechanisms that we're finding the need for here in this material world. It's all a drawing out from the Akashic record. All these inventions is a drawing out of what has been since the beginning. The qualities and characteristics that the magnet has, that the energy that electromagnetism is showing itself through the pulses of electromagnetic energy that we are using for the sake of making life easier. But what we want from all of our endeavors, we hope to get and involve ourselves with that energy that produces the most result, the greatest result, right? If we want to spend our energy doing something, we want to get the most in return for it. First off, we have to realize the energy is not ours. The energy we are using will be here when we leave. The energy we are using was here when we came here. And so we can't say it's our energy, even though we're using it and it feels like part of our body. Yeah, it's helping the functions of the body. But it's not our energy. And so we do have the means by consciousness of being able to determine what we use the energy of the body for. And that's what bhakti is. It is a turning from the soul, turning from its own and being directed now to the source. So if we look to the source, then we will find, as this city is described, the great metropolis, how does it say? The most prosperous metropolis. That's what people are looking for in their endeavors to produce. They're looking for prosperity. And most people do not realize this prosperity is already determined before we are born. It is determined by the involvement we have had with the material energy before getting here, has caused us to be able to be allotted what this life will allow us to experience. Now we can mess that up by engaging ourselves. And this is what Krishna consciousness is giving us the ability to do, is not mess up the circumstances we have been given to be able to develop now in perfection love for God. Now if we turn all of our attention towards that development, then we will experience in this human form the highest forms of consciousness Bhagavatam is revealing is available to human beings. And it is by absorbing our mind with those conceptualizations about God's personality that enable us as well, because we have the ability to experience consciousness. It is the consciousness that God is revealing to us that we are troubled by, that He wants to help us experience the highest forms of happiness with. So this experience of prosperity, bountifulness, and enough of everything is something being revealed that the inhabitants, every one of Krishna's inhabitants of every one of Krishna's cities have this very same experience. Like an endless bank account. I used to work for the government. And, you know, if you go buying anything on the government's account, there's a certain amount allotted. But every year they have to renew that. And if you don't use what was allotted the previous year, you don't get the same amount. So leaders who are holding the position to be able to distribute the money that they get know this. So they make certain that everything is spent. To spend it all and ask for more. That's the common practice in government offices. That's the way they see it. Because once it is determined by the leaders of the government that the funding is required, if it's a function that has to continue, then the funding is automatically provided. This is the same way with Krishna consciousness. There is a certain amount being offered to Krishna in the temple every single day. And as devotees, then, we have those of us who have the responsibility of going out and gathering together those offerings that will be made to Krishna. We want to find the best and that which will be most pleasing to Krishna. But ultimately, because now we have connected ourselves to Krishna, Krishna's pockets are unlimited. Not because he has holes in his pockets, because he's the source of everything. So now what we used to look at as work, now we can look at as a privilege and an opportunity being given to us to know what pure love of God is, to experience happiness in the highest possible way in these physical bodies. Joy and pleasure, but pleasure for the right reason. Not finding pleasure in the harm of others and bringing. And this is what a lot of experience is going on in the material world, is people finding happiness with others suffering. Whereas a devotee is just the opposite. He sees the suffering in the world as something that he wants to help people come out of and remove people from. This is the same direction a doctor has in his mind approaching his patients. We want to help everyone we come in contact with to find that they are longing for. Pure love. I was analyzing this morning the difference in society's manufacturing of functions of government. So they have democratic representative government, which we are functioning with. But then they have, in the spiritual world, the form of government that is taking place there could actually be more related to the function a family takes. There's a hierarchy in a family, but a family is made for different functions than a business is. So if the children are given the responsibility of doing the shopping, when they go out and do the shopping, they come back home. They don't charge mom and dad for the groceries or for the fact that they went out and had to spend this, and they might have money provided for them. But in a sense, that means of exchange is a form of communism where everyone shares everything in common, living under one house. That's like communism. But when you have people who are put in positions, and generally in history we've seen, for the most part, all those put in those positions have tried to usurp their authority to gain control over the lives of their subjects. And where we see Krishna in that position of authority, because of Krishna's own nature, he is constantly giving out. And this whole manifestation of the universes is in and of itself an exhalation of God's creative body. So this is also a reflection of his own personal nature, in that he is also constantly in a state of giving. We have life because he has given life. We have breath. We have consciousness. We have the ability to experience now, because of his making available to us knowledge revealed by Bhagavatam, to experience the highest forms of consciousness available to human beings. And in that, when we absorb by consciousness the knowledge that God is there with us, then we open our consciousness up into the realities of the way things actually are. And this enables us to see the universe from a different perspective than we would with our own material eyes, because we're no longer limited to our own abilities. When you surrender to God now, he grants you the ability, which he is in us, to be able to see more clearly, understand more clearly everything that happens to us in our lives. Now we can have a perspective to know why these things happen and how they are all stepping stones or tests set before us for us to be able to pass one after another, and each one of them making us a better human being. Each one of them a test to strengthen us, just like if you rub two knives together properly, you can sharpen both of them if you use the edges in the correct way. So similarly, as devotees are working with each other, they are knocking the edges off of each other's magnificence, so that as time goes on, we become smooth gems in Krishna's treasure house of his own opulence. We become part of Krishna's opulence. His army is his opulence. His believers, his devotees are his opulence. His clothing is his opulence. And he owns everything. The only thing we can do then with that Krishna owns everything is simply try and put it into a form that he might be pleased with, which is what cooking is. Making flowers into a garland, making clothing. We're taking what already is and just moving it into another form, basically. And then, same thing we're doing with our minds and our mouths. We're taking sound vibration that we would usually use for nonsense, creating mirth, laughing, jesting, these kinds of things, creating a sound vibration of a reality that far supersedes the reality to be experienced by any other sound creation of sound vibration. Young people growing up take great pleasure in hearing music. You find young people walking around listening to music constantly all day long.
Yeah.
When I started taking medicine for memory, all these songs of my teenage years started entering back into my mind. And then I started remembering, oh my God, that's what I was doing as a kid, filling my mind with all these songs. Now that could be good or bad, depending on what the songs, meaning of the songs are. But regardless of what the songs were, if we turn all that attention that we have, the ability to turn, towards the supreme source of all, return it to So our lives will be a song that we have formed to make it into an expression of what, as devotees, we would feel would be pleasing to Krishna. And that's what Krishna expects of us. That's all he asks of us as well. But in our heart and in our minds, we conjure things that we have the idea will please us more than God's plan for us. And so we limit ourselves to our own abilities in doing that. Whereas if we surrender to the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and promote the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we open ourselves to the possibility of his helping us. And Krishna is in a place, Krishna could, by breathing hard, could cause a typhoon to happen in a place on this planet. And there are other living beings who are dwelling on the inner surface of this universe that are made of the same nature. In the same nature, that is, that they could cause disturbances on this planet, upsetting the planet. So with this knowledge, it's easy to understand that God could have given knowledge of this similar sort to civilizations past, specifically in regard to keeping this earth balanced. Because if the earth is not balanced in its relationship to the sun, its weather is going to be affected by that. And my perception from the study I've done over the last 50 or so years, I've been living for 75 and studying for at least 50, 60 spiritual truths. It appears as though what we are currently taking to be normal is way out of whack. And what will require the return to normalcy by most human beings will seem to be disastrous calamity. So it looks to me as though when this earth is restored to its original place, the people that are going to be allowed to inhabit that will be those who would put their trust in the force of the Supreme, who is in control of everything. But see, even we see by experience, we can have that trust in God for years and years and years and years, and still by will, by determination of the soul, who decides by the mind that he can find something better on his own. And Krishna gives us that free will. There's no saying how many lifetimes it has taken us to get to the stage of development we have reached human being now to this point. How many lives this very opportunity is being offered as an opportunity for us to get out of the material world altogether. We got to do everything we can to take full advantage of this. Applying ourselves to the study of these books, at least 1, 2, 3 hours a day until they become so familiar to us that our mind doesn't have anything else to speak about. There is nothing else in our minds to have association with but those eternal pastimes, the substance. Just like it's described, by attendance of the class, devotional service becomes an irrevocable fact. Means you can't do anything to keep it from happening. So it's kind of like the planting of a seed. Once you plant the seed and the water is given, it's going to come up. You can't stop that. So once you engaged in bhakti long enough to become completely immersed in the substance of the truth that it is. Because this bhakti, the energy that we talk about being moved by, it is God's energy itself, God's own energy within us that is available to every form of life there is. See, human beings can provoke this in the animal kingdom, but not as readily as it is made available because of communication. Lord Chaitanya could take a tiger in the wild and have him standing on 2 feet dancing. Yeah. See, that's what we don't have the ability to do here. We still have fear. You see a tiger here, boy, goosebumps wouldn't be from happiness. It would be from wondering how to get out of this place and run away. So, that's the difference between having full trust and faith in the Supreme Person and having full trust and faith in ourselves and our own abilities. It's the difference between life and death, knowing and unknowing, darkness and light, ignorance and truth, and full knowledge. Everything points us, if we can look at every instruction we've had in life, everything is pointing us to the perfection of God's eternal love. But we will only be able to recognize that if another soul with that love opens our eyes. So all of us who have had our eyes open, now we have to develop in us that love, that desire to want to open the eyes of all those we come in contact with. And it is by this day-by-day study and applying ourselves to this that we'll also develop this appreciation for how great an opportunity this is being given to us as by the Supreme Person himself. Coming in the form over and over again, not only as a human being, but in every form of life there is. Krishna has manifested the perfection of all those forms. And even in the lower form, what would seem to be a lower form of life, he has come to deliver his devotees and to annihilate the miscreants. Annihilation simply means bringing an end to those who are trying to stop the work of God on this planet, putting them in a place more suitable. If they want to stop God's work, then they can go to a place where God's work is not taking place. And there's many places like that in the universe, described in Bhagavatam. Some are hellish, some are very prosperous, some are very opulent, more so than the heavenly planets. But in separation from God, the inhabitants will never know the pure force and the power of love of God by separating themselves from God. We've been forced to be separated physically from God because of the acts we engaged in that made God's laws force us into this place that we're in. Now we just have to engage in those activities as Krishna described that will get us out. And that will be that we engage in those activities that the people who are out are engaged in. That means singing and dancing. And living our life in pure happiness. God wants us to be happy. And we continue to look for happiness in other ways and end up suffering. And then asking where the suffering is coming from. Or a famous saying, what have I done to deserve this? We end up saying, isn't that? What did I do? My mother used to say that a lot. What did I do to get such stuff? So if we are open up, it's a good question to ask God, but not just to make it as a dissatisfied statement, but to actually make it as a question that God can reveal to us what it is that we have done. And in this way, when we learn that, we won't do it again. And we'll continue to follow in those steps that will give us the experience Krishna wants us to have. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. To know the experience of eternalness, then we create eternal sound vibrations. If there's any other way to create something eternal here, I'd like to know of it. We can take part in that together. But from what I have been taught, this sound vibration of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the only way to know and experience the nature of the soul itself. By knowing the nature of God through the sound vibration of His names, gives us realization of our own nature as well. And vice versa, if we don't know our own nature, we're not going to know the nature of God. So Krishna gives us the nature, His own nature, by us being able to create the sound of His name, and in that learn the substance of the soul, that it is that we are, that is doing the chanting, that will enable us to know the nectar of this constant chanting, and that there are things to be chanted that could be experienced constantly, that never has to be stopped. This is what Lord Brahma is engaged in doing. So when we think there are processes to contact demigods, they're too busy doing their stuff. They don't need us to bother them. We think our lives are so important, we have to ask these people in official positions so much higher and more elevated than we are, that they can take time out of their day to fulfill our needs. This is a human perception on prayer. Take God away from what He's doing to meet our needs. That's not what prayer is. So we have to condition our minds, again, recondition our minds and cleanse our minds to realize we are the ones to be engaged by God. God is not the one to be engaged by us. But automatically, by being engaged in God's energy, everything that we need to function and everything that we are hoping to experience will be fulfilled. But it might require some suffering. Suffering is good, can be good for instruction. But generally, suffering is to let us know that something's wrong. When the body causes pain, we know that something's out of whack. We need something. So, if in our spiritual life we see death as fear, if we're fearing death, if we're running away from responsibilities, if we're having a bitter taste in our mouth about life itself, we have to look at our own lives from an objective perspective. And thereby we can see what we can do to make life better. Making life better for ourselves sometimes is a way to make life better for others, in fact. If you're going to be cooking for yourself, unselfishly then would incorporate into the idea of cooking for others as well. Krishna consciousness, we don't even have to take thought of it. We just cook for one person and then everybody else gets in. This process makes everything in life that people endeavor for much easier to fulfill than if we try to do things on our own. Getting back to the idea of communism, if people do all share one faith, believing that they have one original source that life came from, then it seems reasonable they would live more in a familial relationship with each other than a business relationship. And as we've seen in our own experience, we can get along much easier with family members at home that we come to and confess all the things that we've experienced in the outside world. Because those relationships based on family are supposed to be loving. And so if the family becomes an extension by nature into a neighborhood, and of course the neighborhood by extension becomes a city, and the cities become nations, if they are all working within the understanding of being familial with one another, being part of the same family, their devotion towards what they are doing is going to be affected by their expectation upon others. This is how pure love is developed, because if we give love, only able to give love with the expectation of how much we will get back from that, it's not going to be pure love. It's not pure love at all. It's not love even. Because nature of love is this giving of itself in completeness. There's a saying, no greater love has a man than this, than he lay down his life for his fellow man. And so what more can we give than life? But that is the requirement as well. So if we're not giving our life to the development of love, then we're not going to experience what we are longing for. It is love that we are longing for in our pursuits of life. But in our mind's capacity to devise, we put something else above love as the experience to aim for. And so we get those experiences. And that's what we suffer from, a lack of love. We suffer from a lack of love. Krishna's love, though.
Krishna's love.
Yeah. And where that lack comes from is our directing our energies in a direction other than Krishna. Yeah. It seems like a simple thing to say, but through the day, we have to make it a thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the complications set in. Well, any comments, any questions, any realizations maybe somebody would like to share?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for the class. Yeah, very good class.
Big audience today.
Krishna coming for Dwaraka.
Yeah,
All the residents of Dwaraka, inhabitants of Dwaraka, are very much excited to welcome
yeah.
personality of Godhead.
We're going to be celebrating what we call Christmas in a few days. At this time of the year, almost it's like people get into what would be or should be an ordinary mood of service to one another. They develop the idea that I have to buy something for someone, I have to get them this thing, I have to get my friend this thing and that thing. Everybody's thinking about something they're going to get for someone else. Not everybody, but the season is set up for us to be able to develop that kind of consciousness. Can I get you something? And that's the kind of consciousness human beings are supposed to be having towards one another all the time. All the time. So we see that communism can't function if people are living hoping to gain control over others. I cannot find in my mind a reason for any human being to think that they can prosper by controlling other people.
Yeah.
But this is in some people's mentality. It is because they do not know the result of such activity will be that they themselves will be forced to be controlled. 7 times the amount of suffering they put another human being through, they will have to themselves suffer.
Yeah.
That's the laws of karma, the way it works.
Yeah.
And that's what is required for us to be returning. We have to get punished 7 times over to put the punishment we put other people through in this world. So when suffering comes to us, what we should be asking is not why does this come to me, but what did I do to cause this to come to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we will get a more clear understanding of how to keep from that happening again. That's the cure. We're not looking for Band-Aids. We're looking for absolute cures to everything. That's what Krishna is. He's the cure to everything, every problem. There's one solution. Any comments, any questions, any realizations? Grant Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki